You're listening to the NFL Draft Bible Podcast Network, part of Sports Illustrated, giving you daily NFL Draft, Dynasty, and Devy Fantasy Football podcasts.
Class is officially in session. Welcome into the draft seminar presented by Sports Illustrated's NFL Draft Bible Podcast Network. I'm your host, Matt Hicks, the FF Educator, joined as always by John Lobb, the Gridiron Scholar. On today's breakdown, we are going to be doing the fantasy football rookie profile for Ja'Marr Chase, the forgotten wide receiver one. I swear, with a year off from the opt-out, we have forgotten a little bit about the immense talent of Ja'Marr Chase, so I'm so excited to jump into today's episode. You can support this show by pressing subscribe, whether you're watching on YouTube, listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and leaving us a 5-star review or that thumbs up, depending on the platform you're listening on. And when you subscribe, not only will you get access to us in the audio version, but you also get access to all the great NFL Draft Bible Podcast Network shows. With that being said, John, let's go ahead and jump into it. Tell us about your initial thoughts for Ja'Marr Chase, the explosive record setter out of LSU.
The nation may have forgotten about Ja'Marr Chase, but I will never forget about that 2019 LSU Tigers offense. And Ja'Marr Chase was one of the key cogs in that record-breaking unit. And remember, he played with Justin Jefferson at wide receiver. So when you put it into context, his numbers are even more amazing from 2019. In high school, he was a 4-star recruit and one of the top-rated players in Louisiana. He was twice named the New Orleans Advocate All-Metro team. He won the 5A state title in the long jump as a junior. So you have a track and field background with prodigious athletic ability. He received offers from numerous Power 5 programs, but he chose to stay in state with the Tigers. As a true freshman in 2018, he played in all 13 games. He only had 23 receptions for 313 yards and 3 touchdowns. But that offense wasn't as good when he was a freshman. It was starting to take flight late in the year as Joe Burrow got a little bit better. But in 2019, that offense was it skyrocketed. And Ja'Marr Chase was the Biletnikoff Award winner, everyone. He was the best wide receiver in the nation. He was first-team All-SEC and unanimous All-American in 2019. He set SEC single-season marks with 1,780 receiving yards and 20 touchdowns. Subsequently, they've been broken in 2020 by Devonta Smith. But Ja'Marr Chase was simply spectacular that year. To me, this draft process, Matt, is going to be fascinating. How does the NFL scouts and scouting departments, how do they consider him taking an opt-out year? But the film and the production from 2 years ago is unquestionably great. Matt, what did you see?
Yeah, well, you said film, John, so let's go ahead and get into the breakdown here. My fantasy football projection for Ja'Marr Chase is a league-winning projection. That is a high score here in my grade. If you're talking about Ja'Marr Chase, the conversation starts with his pass-catching ability, stickiest hands in the draft, John, and that's something that sometimes we take lightly or sometimes we may forget because we haven't seen him for the year, but you can't underestimate. Now, Joe Burrow is a good quarterback, and he's got good ball placement, but he didn't always have good ball placement, but Ja'Marr Chase sure made it look like if he was throwing in his direction that ball was on target. He's got a large catch radius. He's long. He plays longer than his actual size. He's 6'0". It looks like he's playing 6'3", and those hands don't drop anything, and he also separates really well with those hands near or at the catch point. When it comes to contested catch ability, he dominates defensive backs, John. It didn't look fair, and he was playing against the best defensive backs in the country, not only in the SEC, but in the SEC West, and it did not matter who they lined up against him. He used that large catch radius, and he was absolutely mossing defensive backs on a regular basis. One of the things that I think is a little underrated when it comes to Ja'Marr Chase is his route running ability. Now, John, there's a couple things that can make me fall in love with any prospect. And for a wide receiver, if you can break a slant, it is a nearly uncoverable thing to stop in the NFL. It sounds so simple, but a simple slant route, you look at guys like Odell Beckham Jr. at his prime. The reason we're falling in love with A.J. Brown now, if you can break a slant, it's really hard to cover you in the NFL. Ja'Marr Chase has a really good release off the line of scrimmage. He's got clean footwork. It does not matter. Defensive backs can't jam him, and he creates separation quickly with that first step. He runs the entire route tree, John. There is not a route that he did not run at LSU and that he did not run with technical excellence. And he is a great straight line burner. All right, he moves really well north to south. He accelerates well along the boundary, and that's where he can dominate in the NFL. But he can also move east and west a little bit. He can move with the ball in his hands after the catch. There's really nothing I don't like about Ja'Marr Chase. 93 in catch, 92 in contested catch, 87 in route running, 87 in acceleration. John, I don't give out grades in the 80s easily, and he's scoring in the 90s. Are you ready to actually look at some of this film? Because I'm excited.
I can't wait, my friend. And one thing I got to say, Jerry Rice and John Taylor were the masters of those slant routes for those Super Bowl teams in the 80s.
I love it. The historian here, John, and all of our film here, as we flip it on with the Ole Miss game, all of our film is provided by Brandon Lejeune, Devy Deep Dive on Twitter and YouTube. And right off the bat, John, you see that ability to stretch the field. Here's the drag route coming off of it. He shakes this Ole Miss defender, and he's fighting forward, and he gets that extra yards, almost scores a touchdown off a dead play here.
Yeah, and you saw his hand, and
there's a slant. John, look at the slant.
That's A.J. Brown, Jerry Rice. I mean, maybe not as good as Brown. Brown is, he might be one of the best I've ever seen. But he's darn good, Ja'Marr Chase, at that route. Oh, look at that.
And that ball was a little off track here, and he reacts to it really well. He turns over his shoulder well. Look at him shake this Ole Miss defender, John. And once he does, look, he's breaking downfield. To see a guy that is such a good contested catch guy that can move that quickly, it's rare, John. He's a rare combination of strengths here, and we're seeing it again against Clemson. That would have been the semifinals game, and he just keeps moving after catching the ball.
Yeah, and we've talked about it with running backs, Matt, but his second-level vision on those slant routes are just stupendous. You cannot go 60 yards on a slant route if you don't have good second-level vision and get excellent angles on those defensive backs.
And John, one thing that we're seeing on the film clip now, look at the body positioning. You could be 6'4" and lose every contested catch, but Ja'Marr Chase is 6'0" and wins them because he puts his body in a position to win. Look at the way he turns that shoulder, turns around, finds that ball in midair, and gets above that defensive back here. And again, look at that slant against Vandy. It's that first step, John. It's game over. I mean, when you can get 50 yards off your first step, you're going to be nearly untouchable in the NFL. Look at that. Oh, man. Against Clemson, another touchdown. He broke the SEC single-season record, John. 4 touchdowns in a season. You mentioned it was broken again. But what else does your production profile show for Ja'Marr Chase out of LSU?
So one thing that was really impressive in those clips, his hands, and I it's not the end all and be all in my assessment. I'm not a big hands guy because they can be subjective. But when you see outliers, Ja'Marr Chase just has tremendous hands. He just plucked those balls so effortlessly at times. But what's really impressive, let's go back to the 2019 season, Matt, that I talked about earlier. His catch percentage was 66%. But this number, when his teammate was Justin Jefferson, Ja'Marr Chase had a team aerial dominator of 30%. I mean, that is amazing when you consider that his teammate just broke the record in the NFL for yards by
and Terrace Marshall was also on the field, so he had a lot of good weapons around him.
And he had Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the backfield, so that's an incredible number. He's 6 foot, 208 pounds. Uber playmaker, and Matt, you get him the ball on the slant and just let him do his job. Ja'Marr Chase can be special. He's my number 1 wide receiver in this class, Matt. I am very bullish on Chase.
I'm right there with you, man, and I'm jacked up just talking about him. We hope you are too, and we appreciate you listening to this episode of our Rookie Profile series. Make sure to go ahead and subscribe, whether you're watching on YouTube, listening on Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. Leave us the 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or give the video the thumbs up on YouTube. Class is officially over. Put those pencils